Coming up on the Men at the Movies podcast, we discuss the 80s movie Legend. Many people go through life thinking that walking with God will prevent evil from harming them. And when their world collapses, they run into hiding thinking it's their fault. But we are beings of light created in the image of God, and we can't trust what the darkness tells us. Join us as we discover God's truth in this movie.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story, the story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being.
Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and joining me, my fellow North Carolinian, Bryan Mitchell. Hey, Bryan, how are you doing today, man?
Good. I'm going to just keep pounding.
And for all our listeners outside the viewing area, that is that's actually, it is, we've used that phrase for the Panthers for so long now. I think people actually forget where it came from. And now they just do a big drum every time and do before game days and keep pounding. But Sam Mills, who a longtime linebacker for the Saints, then came and retired, played for the Panthers, retired, was a coach for us for a few years. Died from cancer. But during his time here, he was going, and he, gave some motivational speeches, and that was the thing he kept saying was keep pounding. And so I have a friend who has cancer. So since we just brought that up, I want to tell Jeremy to keep pounding himself. So keep pounding, man. And we're pounding here. We're pounding away here. And so, Bryan, before we get to talking about Legend, which is the 1985 movie or 86, I get different dates. Wikipedia says 85, Amazon says 86. And we're going to get into the director's cut. It is not some Legend movie that came out in like 2015, which also popped up on when I tried to Google it. I just want to know what you've been up to since we talked about Willow.
Oh, I've been quite busy. Now, the other Legend movie is a good one too, but different genre, of course. But I've been writing
It looked
and
a little
I've been
different.
working and raising those kids.
So we had several interruptions that probably got edited out last time. So I think you locked them up in the dungeon this time.
I don't know what they're doing. They might burst in at any moment because they were quiet. I went to go check on them, and they were like nowhere to be seen. All that I heard was my wife downstairs, and she was answering everything. So these guys are probably going to come in on us and be legendary during this talk on Legend.
And as every father knows, there is nothing more terrifying than quiet children. So, Bryan, we did Willow last time. We did Legend this time. Apparently, you have an affinity for 1980s fantasy genre. And so, what was it like rewatching Legend this time? Because I guess it's been a few years since you'd seen it.
It's been a while, and I've seen it many times before. But one thing I have to say that this film, the thing that it can hang its hat on is the visuals. It's just a visually stunning movie. And they did have a lot of trouble when it comes into producing the movie. There was a fire on the set that set them back. They just kept having trouble. But the costumes were fantastic. They got Tom Cruise in there, Mia Sara as well. Tim Curry did a fantastic job as Darkness. I mean, goodness, that was just amazing. And I had no idea who it was when I was a child when I first watched it. And later on, I've watched the miniseries for Stephen King's It, knew that was Tom Curry. And he has a crazy, wild history of movies he's been in. And knowing that he's Darkness in this one is very appropriate, especially for the 80s at that time. Yeah, 80s, yeah. Crazy, good stuff.
I remember him mostly from Clue, but apparently they saw the casting person saw him in Rocky Horror Picture Show and said, yeah, we want that guy. And then we're going to put so much makeup on him, you'll have no idea who it is. Like 5.5 hours every day, he would have to get his all the prosthetics glued in. And then at the end of the day, he had to sit in a solvent bath for an hour to loosen the glue so he could take off the prosthetics. I read one time he got impatient, got claustrophobic, got out and pulled it off, but it pulled off his skin, so they had to shoot other scenes for a week before he could get back in the role of Lord Darkness.
Imagine having to do that every day. But they picked the right guy for it. I mean, Rocky Horror Picture Show, he was what better person could play Darkness, or the Prince of Darkness, Satan, the devil? I mean, he just was a perfect fit for that. But yeah, I heard about that, the horrors of his costume. But I do know that he liked how he looked. That's one thing that he did like. He complained about the horns being heavy at one point, and they found a way to make them lighter. And that when he saw himself in the mirror for the first time, then he's like, oh. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
What is that saying? There's a price for beauty. So if they really wanted to make him look like Darkness, he had to pay the price, because he didn't have a pro wrestling physique. And they wanted Darkness to have that. So they had to put on that suit. And they made it look as real as possible. It's not like a costume you buy at the Halloween store and pump it up, or it's cushiony. It looks really real. I mean, I thought that was Tim Curry, his body when I was younger. And he's a really short guy from what I understand. And I know how short people are because I'm short. So him going up against Tom Cruise, I mean, probably both of them are short, and he hasn't looked real tall. So that must have been so much fun.
And so, is that who you're going to go as this year for Halloween? Is the Lord of Darkness?
No, I can't quite pull that one off. I don't know what I'm going to do.
I
usually just
you don't have 5.5 hours to apply the makeup.
Yeah, that would be interesting. But or just turn on some Rocky music and start building up some muscle, and keep going at it, keep pounding. But
there we go. Keep pounding is going to be the theme of the podcast. It's what linebackers are going to keep doing to Bryce Young, who's probably as tall as Tom Cruise.
And very smart, from what I understand. He's got that psychology, sports psychology, and that is huge for a quarterback. So hopefully, if he gets in a slump, he'll know how to work himself out of it. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, that's why they play the games on the field.
Yep.
So the other sort of the trivia stuff that as we were looking at is, and we realized this as we were talking on the pre-show, we watched 2 different versions of the film, because there is the theatrical version, which came out in 1985, which apparently Tom Cruise and Ridley Scott. Yes, Ridley Scott directed this movie, the same one who did, Alien, Gladiator, what is that? The Martian, Robin Hood. I mean, a lot of great movies. But I think this was his last fantasy movie that he ever did. But they were so unhappy with it. In 2002, they released what they called the director's cut, not available for streaming. So there are actually some differences to the story that we're going to sort of highlight along the way. And because Bryan watched the extended, what was it, 113 minutes? Mine was 90. I think it's something like that.
I got that director's cut when it first came out, and I always watched the director's cut. I remember some of the theatrical version, as you mentioned it. But there are some nuances that I did not remember. So it's kind of interesting on how they improved upon the theatrical version. But I think they were kind of told to cut down at that time, because in the 80s they were
Right.
cut down time. They wanted it to be 90 minutes pretty much every single time. It's very cookie cutters, almost just like glam rock was. Like every album had to have a ballad, and the rest of them could rock. At least have one or two good songs on it, and y'all just make up something, and that's okay for the rest of the album, and we'll get people to sell it. So that kind of might have been a thing too for movies in the 80s, but I think the 80s movies were fantastic. This movie, when I was younger, I really loved it. Another fantasy I loved, since you noted that I love movies from the 80s that were fantasies, Willow included, but my favorite one is Labyrinth. And I love the music of it. David Bowie does a great job, but that's for another talk. It's not this movie.
Yeah.
But Legend is definitely interesting in that the visual is fantastic. I love the whole fantasy genre, going up against Prince of Darkness. You have your hero, you have your basic setup, farm boy, a guy who kind of just hangs out in the woods all the time. He's in tune with the forest and all the magic of the forest, and he's introducing that to Lily, who's a princess in the director's cut. And
and just some highborn lady in mine.
Yeah.
Some noble's daughter. She does not sing. No singing from Sloane Peterson on this one. Right. She's able to stop a charging unicorn.
And she gets down in a fetal position when it's stomping around her, before things settle down, and it gets hit by the poisonous arrow that sends things into a long winter for pretty much the duration of the film, until we get things worked out.
So as you mentioned, Bryan, there's Lily, played by Mia Sara, who is played. I know her mostly as Sloane from Ferris Bueller's. Got Tom Cruise playing Jack, the innocent farm boy. Not even a farm boy. He lives in the woods. And the thing that describes both of their characters in the story is being innocent and pure of heart. And so that's an important thing as we go along the story. Then there's Darkness, who we see is like imprisoned in darkness, again played by Tim Curry, and he enlists his minions of goblins to go and steal the horns of the unicorns, because in the horns it's contained basically the power of creation. And if he can kill the unicorns, take their horns, he can escape his dungeon of darkness, and the world will be immersed in a eternity of night. That's basically the battle between good and evil. And in my version, we'll talk about the difference. For the theatrical version, Darkness kidnaps, I called her Sloane. Darkness kidnaps Lily, tries to woo her, make her his wife. Thankfully, they changed the earlier screenplay edition where he raped her. That would have been bad. That would have solidified him as a big bad. And she pretends to be hypnotized by him. She wants to kill the unicorn. She tries to set it free. Jack rushes in and banishes Darkness to darkness, goes into the universe and does something, disintegrates.
He runs the daddy, Father Darkness.
Yeah, yeah. But Lily's under a spell, so Jack revives her with a kiss, and they sort of frolic off into the meadows and wave goodbye to the fairies and the unicorns that are now alive. But as that scene's fading, Darkness's face comes up and starts laughing, and then the movie goes to black. So it's a very strange ending on, on the theatrical version. How does it end in your version, Bryan?
They kind of do their little kiss, and she runs off back to the castle, and they talk about how they're going to catch up tomorrow. But there's also this idea that they're going to get married because he went and got that ring, but it's not happening overnight. She's planning on going back to the castle, and he's going to catch up with her later. So that's how it pretty much ends there, with her running away and Jack watching from the distance like some kind of creeper watches folks on Instagram. He's not a creeper. Jack's
you said
a
you
totally
liked this
good
movie.
guy.
Yes, I will always be here for you, Lily.
Always. It's like that horrible song by I think it's the Police. I'll be watching
every
you.
move you make.
Yes.
I had a Police best of album, and I'm playing it, and my son Andrew, who's now 17, actually was like, this song is weird. Sort of like Santa Claus. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. So this is not, Jack was not like that to Lily. He did not say, I'll be watching through your castle window.
He's just watching her go. And it's sort of like when you take your date out, and at the end of the date, you make sure they get back to their house safe and sound. It's the right thing to do. But that's all. That's the way I took it. There's no creepiness there. It's being a little silly.
And no
myself.
laughing head of darkness to close out the movie?
No, he's not there. He's not hanging out. But I think what they were trying to do in a theatrical version is probably set up another movie where it's going to, Darkness had other plans for them. Who knows? But I do like the director's cut. I like how it ends. The climax is pretty much the same, but I imagine it would be the same. I couldn't see them doing it any differently. But that they changed the ending to that is kind of weird. It's probably one of the downsides of the film.
So now that we've sort of teased out most of the movie and set the framework for it, we'll sort of go through some of the scenes, some of the concepts. And as you obviously can tell, there's this big fight. It's this battle, this tug of war between darkness and light, good and evil, all that stuff. And that was sort of what the Ridley Scott, who helped also, he was the director as well as participated in the screenplay. In the beginning of the movie, both of them, both the theatrical version and the director's cut, starts with the crawl, some words across the screen. And Bryan said I need to like alter my voice, but when I tried to do it, I felt like I just sounded like Dark Helmet from Spaceballs, and that would be another good, I think, 80s movie that would be good. I still enjoy that one. If anyone catches the reference, welcome to your 50s. But it said once long ago, before there was such a thing as time, the world was shrouded in darkness. Then came the splendor of light, bringing life and love into the universe, and the Lord of Darkness retreated deep into the shadows of the earth, plotting his return to power by banishing light forever. So far, sounds very biblical. But precious light is protected, harbored in the souls of unicorns, the most mythical of all creatures. Kind of a separation from the Bible, but we'll go with it. Unicorns are safe from the Lord of Darkness. They can only be found by the purest of mortals. Such a mortal is Jack, who lives in solitude with the animals of the forest. A beautiful girl named Lily loves Jack with all her heart. In their innocence, they believe only goodness exists in the world. Together, they will learn there can be no good without evil, no love without hate, no heaven without hell, no light without darkness. The harmony of the universe depends on an eternal balance. Out of the struggle to maintain this balance comes the birth of legends. So, Bryan, what pops out from that? I mean, that's sort of telling you the philosophy of the movie.
Well, the thing that really stands out to me is the innocence part, where they're innocent, and even though they do have their character flaws, I think I can go with that because it seems like they were kind of going about things where they just didn't understand the consequences. Like Jack knew the consequences of showing Lily the unicorns if she were to touch it. It was a forbidden thing, but he was innocent in thinking Lily wouldn't do such a thing. And where Lily's innocent is she didn't think she could harm the creatures by doing so. And that kind of reminds me of the whole origin story, the creation story, the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. But nowadays, now that I'm older, when I was younger, it's like all the girls' fault. But I think now we know that, Adam is as guilty as Eve is. And in this story, it kind of all falls on Jack's kind of guilty for bringing her there, but he trusted her, so it kind of all falls on her. But either way, I do see them both as innocent in this story, and they are cunning in a way where they need to overcome evil by using deceptive tactics, which is pretty interesting. One of the scenes where it's missing in the theatrical version is an extended scene where Jack is up against this ghoulishly thing that comes out of a bog. It's called Meg Mucklebones, and it's a disgusting looking creature. It's got all this goo running off its greenish face, and they actually modeled it after Keith Richards, from what I understand, and they just extended its nose and make it horrible looking thing. And Jack tricks it by making her think that he's attracted to it. And he even says,
no offense, Keith.
Yes, Keith. So he makes her think that he is attracted to her, saying that the angels of heaven must envy her beauty. And he goes on to have her look at the back of his shield, looking at her reflection so that he can use his sword to decapitate Meg Mucklebones and carry on his way. But the reason why he would use his sword is because Meg Mucklebones was pretty adamant on eating Jack alive. So it's either get eaten alive or decapitate the monster. So don't feel sorry for Meg Mucklebones, folks.
She got what was coming to her. There's this idea, and to the beginning of the movie, as you said, is very beautifully. It's beautifully shot. It does remind you of Eden, how it must have looked. The scene where Lily and Jack are sitting there, and there's a bird on the shoulder, and like Jack is holding a fox and petting it like it'd be a tabby cat or something. All his peace, all his beauty, petals flowing everywhere. He jumps into the water and it's just vibrant blue. And it's just meant to show the beauty of innocence, right? And I completely agree. It does have the fall. And as I think there is a very clear distinction in the Bible, even where God said Eve was deceived. The woman was deceived. Not because she's foolish or stupid or anything like that. It's just she was deceived. She believed a lie. That's all the deception is. You believe a lie. The man knew what was happening. Adam knew what was happening and still went along with it. And I think Jack, in this way, he knew what Lily was doing was wrong. It is forbidden. It is sacred. These animals, don't touch them. But all he did was stand there and then run away. Just like Adam, he was cursed in his inaction. The other part that I think is interesting is throughout the movie, Jack and Lily both feel like they were the ones who did something wrong. And while that might technically be true, they weren't the ones who killed the unicorn. like, and for a long time, Jack didn't know what happened. He thought that the world turned to winter because Lily touched the unicorn. Like, he thought everything that went wrong in his life was because of an action that he did. You know, he even said, he told Lily, as long as the unicorns roam the earth, evil can never harm the pure of heart. And not to like go back to this idea of cancer, but a lot of people walk through life with this belief that if they believe in Jesus, if they walk with God, evil can never touch them. But what I know from both reading in the Bible and my experience, following God actually makes you more of a target for the enemy. And bad things are going to happen, but it's not going to be because of anything we did. It's because any child of God is going to be opposed, is going to be attacked. And so when this sort of thing happens, we shouldn't be surprised, but hopefully it won't drive us. We see sin in the garden drove Adam and Eve to hiding. We see this drove Jack to run away and Lily to get captured. But when this sort of thing happens, I hope that it will drive me closer to God, to seek out him and say, this is going on. I don't know what to do. And I cling closer to God as a result, not sort of run away and feel like it's my fault that this is happening.
From there, where there's the fall, and hopefully with everyone, when we fall, there's redemption, or at least we're seeking that. And that's exactly what Jack and Lily both do. They have different story arcs, but it's not like they're trying to check something off a list. They're not trying to get on Santa Claus's list, because they know he's watching. Right. They know it's the right thing to do. They know that they need to overcome.
There it is, back to the creeper again.
They have to overcome this. So Jack is willing to take on darkness, and he's got his band of misfits to help him out. They take him to go get the gear he needs, the legendary warrior suit and sword and shield that's going to guide him through. And also Lily, who's captured, which is this is a very interesting storyline. I think it kind of gets passed off because we lose that story for a while because we stay so long with Jack while he's getting prepared, and he goes and talks to the unicorn and asks for forgiveness, and that's another part. He asks for forgiveness before he goes on and tries to correct the wrongs, to correct his mistakes. Lily, she's captured in darkness, and we get a lot of talk from darkness itself, where he wants to just take the girl, and he's talking to his father about how to get this woman, and the father says, you need to woo her, win her. And that's when he starts trying to seduce Lily to his side, to the ways of darkness. And her dealing with all those temptations, especially the seduction, because that's pretty much what they're aiming at there with Darkness and Lily, is he's trying to seduce her so that they can become a couple, and she would belong to him. And she's not willing to succumb to the seduction at all. Never at any time did I feel like she was falling for him at all. I felt like she was trying to trick him, because I think that was all she had to overcome, because she is definitely in a weaker position. But even in those moments, there's some times where she could not help, but she would say something like, never. She would screech, never. And he would strike her. And he'd try to still ease back into wooing her. So the redemption story of these characters who are innocent, and they find themselves now not so innocent, and they're still trying to overcome those temptations and the evils that have taken in the world. I mean, we're dealing with that here all the time. So that's why this story is so relatable to me. It's the hero's journey. We have Jack's story, we have Lily's story. So really, everyone, whether they're male or female, they could see this. They could see the struggles that we all have in overcoming sin.
You talked about how Jack went to the unicorn, asked for forgiveness. He said, "Forgiveness, I meant no wrong." Again, thinking that Winter exists because of his failure. And like you said, it's sort of a redemption story, but the point of the story is redemption's. It starts with forgiveness, but I don't even think we can. Redemption doesn't start asking for forgiveness. It starts when we realize we need forgiveness. That our life, we've tried to live life in our own efforts. We've fallen short of whatever measure of morality we have. And then the whole idea of repentance is to turn from that previous way of living into a new way. And I think that's what the director and the storyteller in here was trying to show, is that loss of innocence, and that how do we live with that? How do we process through it? Because it is difficult. It is difficult because sometimes our lives sort of fall apart through our own actions, through our sins, our drinking, our sexual activity, through whatever it is we're doing. There are consequences. I've heard somebody say, is like, we get upset because we want God to correct the circumstances, the consequences of our sin. And they said that's sort of like looking at God like a cosmic pooper scooper, just looking around to pick up the mess that you leave behind you, where there will be consequences to our actions and to our behavior. The first part of that is to not continue to walk in the way that led to that in the first place.
I'm still on cosmic pooper scooper. That really... But it's so true.
It really sticks in your head, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's so true. So often we want God to come in to our lives and just fix everything, but that's really the wrong way of looking at it. We should pick up our own poop before and then go to God and ask for forgiveness, and then have him come into our lives. Of course, he's already there, but if we're wanting God to fix all our mistakes, we're definitely looking at it wrong, because we have to work on those ourselves for sure.
Well, and I think many believers, especially new believers, but even many, people who have been Christians, followers of Jesus for decades, they have that idea where evil can never harm the pure of heart. And we still wrestle with that question. Why do bad things happen to good people? Which is sort of a faulty question to ask, because that's, as Jesus would say, good. Who are you calling good? That's what he said when the guy came up and said, good teacher. He's like, there's nobody good but God. Why are you calling me good? The fact we do have an enemy of darkness who wants to rule the world in darkness. I mean, it's very, very similar philosophically, because going back to the crawl, and even at the end when they're banishing darkness to the darkness, to his father, to the stars, whatever it is he's going, he says, you think you have won, but what is light without dark? What are you without me? I am a part of you all. I think that is for sure true before Christ, before we do before we're called to repentance. Like that idea that where it goes, no good without evil, no love without hate, no heaven without hell, no light without darkness. Like what comes to your mind, Bryan, when you think about those concepts applied biblically?
Ooh, loaded question. It's so huge. One thing
That's
is,
why I ask it. I don't try to answer it.
yeah, Jesus is the light of the world, and he has given us the opportunity to have light in us. And the weird science behind that is we are bioluminescent. That's something that I put in my books when someone happens to buy it and I'm there. One thing that I like to write if they ask me to sign it is we are all bioluminescent. We can't see that we have light in us, but we are shining. In fact, we actually shine best during the early afternoon of the day, actually. But I think it's kind of interesting that then they had no idea that we were bioluminescent. But here we are so many, centuries later, there's actually proof that there is light in us. And that light leaves when we're gone from here. So what is the deal with the light? I think the truth is we are from God. We know that we want to do the right thing. Most people are moral because they know it's the right thing to do. And God is the truth. And that's where we get our morality from. There's debates where people don't like the idea of, an atheist might say, well, you can't say that I'm not moral. I don't know God. I don't worship God, and I'm still moral. But really what it is we're all human, and we are made by God. And so we all have that morality in us. We have the ability to be moral the way that God wants us to be moral. And it's kind of interesting now today, we have these different ideas where people will say, well, that's not my truth. But that's subjective. That's opinion. Truth is more with fact. Truth is more aligned with fact. Like a square can't be a circle, But some people like to twist things up and make it fit whatever they're trying to fit. But the truth is steadfast. It can't be changed. Light is light, and it is completely different from the darkness. And that's just total fact. And yet, while we know, like under our skin, we pretty much know that underneath this skin, these bones, it's all dark in there, right? But actually, we're shining. It's so weird. So I think that's where we get into this thing is in the physical world. Yeah, we see that inside my mouth it's dark, but truly, what I can't see is that I'm really shining. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I think there's something really special about that. And I try to hit on that when I write because we kind of forget that there's a lot of good to us. Even the people that we pretty much find despicable, they're still shining. They still have the ability to find God. They can turn around. We always have to have that hope that they can and that they're willing to. And probably some people never will want to or feel the need to. They might be good people. They might be moral, upstanding citizens that we can agree with on many things, but the existence of God and where we get our morality from. But we always have well wishes for them and hope the best for them. But I think it's quite interesting that the thing with light and darkness and how it's spoken of so long ago, and it's a little known thing that we talk about now. Like I don't hear it. I didn't hear in science and biology and college, high school, middle school that we're made of light, that we have light in us. I have heard the whole story of that we come from stardust, and that's light. And it's all from the same thing. Like if we consider the Big Bang, if the Big Bang happened and we all come from that event, we're all brothers and sisters. We're all coming from light. All the stardust. Oh man, it's just fascinating. I'm going to simmer down for a minute. I'm getting away from the story of legend.
I love how you said we're all bioluminescent. Like we know from Genesis that we are created in the image of God. We are different from the creatures. And what does that mean? What does that mean we look like? Well, it doesn't matter if you believe in God or not, everybody has a certain moral compass. Everyone believes murder is wrong, stealing is wrong. Like, you don't need laws, you don't need to be a Christian, to be a believer, to be religious, to believe these things. But where did that come from? Where did that sort of morality, sense of right or wrong come from? Animals don't have that. You look at biology, you look at how animals live. It's all about power and might and, taking what they can. And if they can't take it, they'll find something else. So you don't get that sense of morality in the animal kingdom. You only see that with people, which I think is, again, a reflection of how the light of God it lives within us. And because everybody, whether or not they believe it, is in the image of God. And so while you were talking, Bryan, I was pulling up some of the verses that I was thinking of that related to the light. And in John 1, it said, the word gave life to everything that was created, and his life brought light to everyone. The light shines in darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. And
Amen.
Jesus, later in John, said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And Paul writes to the Corinthians, how can light live with darkness? Darkness and light can't coexist. Which is why, going back to that line, I believe you can have good without evil. I believe you can have love without hate. Obviously, we believe in heaven and hell. You can have the good without the bad, but the bad, the light without darkness, like, that's just a weird saying, because you either have light or you have darkness. You can't have both at the same time. And that's why I think before we walk in darkness, but the light of life is still in us. But when Jesus sort of dwells in our hearts, that casts the light out. It doesn't mean we're completely perfect beings who, never make a mistake, because we still have that sin nature within us, as which I think is the interesting part that the Lord of Darkness says is, I am a part of you all, because we have that sin nature. We were born with the sin nature, the heart of darkness, that through our life, through our maturing, we bring more of ourselves into the light, getting rid of the darkness.
I think this is a clever thing that Ridley Scott did, because we can't trust anything that darkness says. So he twists a truth into a lie there. Like, light and darkness can't live together. We can tell the difference. Like, I can look outside, I see the shadows. Some shadows are darker than others. And the light that's shining on the grass and on the buildings, I could tell there's light there. So I can see, and sometimes it's a little bit more harder as when you know folks, you can tell when they're just not in the right place, not by looking at them, but if you know them. And I think that's something that happens with Jack and Lily, where Gump tells to judge her with your heart, but really he's needing to judge her with his mind, and because he knows her, he knows what she's about. Is she the kind of person who's going to kill a unicorn to please the Lord of Darkness? But he knew that she wasn't that kind of person, that she still had light in her. She was not in the darkness at that time, just trying to playing it safe, being shady, trying to extend her life and trick darkness so that they could save the unicorn, doing everything she can to save the unicorn. I think that's a clever thing with darkness, that having him say that, because you want your villains to be believable, and you want you want them to not say things that are so obvious. Like we're getting to those monologues in superhero films where they tell the superhero their plans and they have the diabolical laugh, ha 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 ha, and it's just like, oh, okay, here we go again. But if it's a very clever villain, like the written Lex Luthor is Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor, those are some really good villain examples. And I think Darkness hits well on it here. I think they kind of missed the point where he's trying to woo her. That seems like more or less Darkness would just take rather than try to win someone's favor. That because that takes away his power, it takes away his status because he's a powerful figure and he would just dominate. I would believe that's why they might have had that horrible rape idea in the original script. And hate to touch back on that, but yeah, we know we know that there's people out there who have issues with mentality where they might have a harder time understanding that stealing is wrong, but that's not the overall population of people. You know, people with who are just in a mental state where mental illness where they're struggling. That's there's far less of that than there are us out here who know the difference between right and wrong. And there's so many cases out there, and I don't really know the number, but there have been so many folks who have tried to get off on a murder charge by pleading insanity, and oftentimes that doesn't work out. And from what I understand, those that do work out, they're actually getting themselves in a worse situation because it's far less likely that they'll ever get out of being institutionalized, and they have a very rigorous program of trying to heal that. I just read that somewhere. I can't, and I've seen it on a documentary, but I'll have to bring that back to the table some other time. But that's something that I've heard where there's that gray area, that shady area where, well, if we're all moral, there are a handful of people who can't tell the difference. Just reflecting on that a little bit. But when it comes to light and dark, we can tell the difference. And to say that we're mixed up, trying to confuse us, that's the standard for the Lord of Darkness, the Prince of Darkness. He wants us to be confused. That's his plan. So I think Ridley Scott was spot on by using a little bit of truth and mixing it in to toy with our minds. So some people might have left the theater thinking, you know what? Darkness was right. But that might percolate on their minds a little bit, the whole philosophy behind it. If they think about it a little bit more, we all know the difference. And even those who don't go to church, they know what's moral. It's kind of interesting that we all know. And there's a talk about, we've been in societies for a long time and we know how to survive in a group and we don't want to do anything that offends other people in a group. And that's how we learned our morality. But there's plenty more arguments that show that that's not exactly the case. It's more, it's a deeper thing. It's like in our DNA. It's how we bond and communicate. We like each other. At least most of us do. We want to have bonds. We want to have communications. And we want to have friends. We want people to be at peace. And it's quite interesting that there's so little peace, even though we all want peace. Like I can go to the grocery store. I could drive down the road, and most of the time people are really cool. They go about their business, and they might even wave at me, At least around here they wave. And other parts they wave too. But from afar, when we sit down and we're in a computer behind a computer and we're on social media, then it kind of out of nowhere, all this nastiness kind of comes up. And you see that sometimes I remember in school, because we're still trying to figure things out in school, and like especially middle school, which my son is about to start, is where people really start understanding sarcasm, and they use their sarcasm ad nauseum. And kind of are little pains, but they're learning and getting through that. Eventually, they'll grow into more moral, have a better sense on how to communicate with people and make people feel good about themselves and see that that's a good thing. So yeah, unless someone's an adolescent or completely bonkers, we know the difference. And even the adolescents know it. Like I've seen my children at 3 and 4 years old steal something, take something that they're not supposed to, and they'll kind of peek at me over the shoulder while they're running away. They already know that, oh, I'm not supposed to do this. And I just find that thinking about it's kind of cool how we just know.
Sort of going back to what Gump said, to judge with his heart. It just reminded me again of how light reveals, like you were saying with the shadows. Sometimes when the light's not so strong, the shadows are darker. But the stronger the light is, the more clearly we can see. I think we see that with us. The stronger the light is within us, the more clearly we can see the world around us. So that's all I got, Bryan. Do you have any other final thoughts regarding Legend?
I just feel like I'm gonna get on another rant if I keep going. No, actually, there's not much more. Obviously, there's plenty more I could dive into where we're battling our monsters, our own Meg Mucklebones that are trying to devour us. We've just got to be brave and take out the sword and decapitate the monsters. That doesn't mean grab your sword if you get pulled over for speeding. You just need to slow down next time. But that means the things that are eating at you on the inside, the things that are trying to lead you into the darkness, the things that are telling you to touch the unicorn, the things that are telling you to keep down a bad path, tackle those. There's a way to do it. You don't just have to. There's affirmation, and then there's realizing that there's a problem and going after it, proactively changing your behavior, and that's how you defeat those monsters. You change direction. You kill them by turning away. And that's figuratively with the sword.
All right. Well, Bryan, you got anything? You got any books coming out soon, or anything to plug?
I do. Almost Paradise is the follow-up to Infernal Fall. In it, if you remember Infernal Fall, he falls. Daniel falls into Dante's Inferno, and he's trying to get back. And Almost Paradise is kind of like post-traumatic stress, where he's discovering that it's harder to fly than to fall. So when you come out of the darkness, you get those tugs where you might kind of fall back into it. I have many friends who were addicted to drugs or alcohol, a lot more with alcohol, even though it's the same as a drug, but illegal drugs. It's so easy to kind of fall back into it after a month or even a year, or 2 years, or 3 years, or however long. And that's the same with any sin, lust, gluttony, thieving, all those things. The way to overcome that, how do you keep flying so that you don't fall back into sin? And it's something that I try to get after in this story, but it's a fun story. I had a lot of fun writing it.
Yeah, and how can they find that? Just on Amazon?
Yeah, it'll be on Amazon. It will be out October 24th. Yeah, there we go. Just checking the date. October 24th. It's on a Tuesday. If you're interested in joining the launch team, reach out to me on social media or go to my website, www.briantimothymitchell.com. Yeah, you can get an early copy.
There you go. Well, thanks, Bryan, for your time, and really enjoyed this. Even though we watched two sort of different movies, it was it was enlightening. Ha ha.
Enlightening. Indeed.
So this has been Paul McDonald and Bryan Timothy Mitchell talking about Legend. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found some revelation in it. And hope you join us next time here on the Men at the Movies podcast. Keep pounding.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?